CS6 and After Effects CS5. For whatever reason, CS6 sometimes just doesn't work. All right, so your best bet is to use After Effects CS5. So if you go to your Start menu and you just type in CS5, After Effects should show up in the list, or you could type in After Effects CS5, and that will pop up in the list. Okay. So what we do is we work inside Maya, we model our stuff, we light our stuff, we animate our stuff, we texture our stuff, we render it out, and that'll bring it into a sequence. So we'll literally have a frame for every single one of our file, or a file for every single one of our frames. In order for us to make that into a movie, we bring it into QuickTime, or into After Effects, and After Effects takes that sequence and makes it into a QuickTime movie that we could show people. All right. Now that's the very, what we're doing is the very minimal of what you would do. What they would do, like in the industry, is let's say they had a car driving down the road. If at some point they realized, hey, I want to change the color of the car, I want to change the color of the road, they would break those into two separate renderings. So the car would be on one rendering, the road would be on another rendering, then they would put those together in After Effects, and then they could adjust the coloring on them. And you could even go further and break down even the car to say, I may want to change the color of the tires, or the color of the windshield, or the color of the sheet metal, or the color of whatever. And you could break down each one of these pieces into smaller and smaller and smaller bits, and basically rebuild that animation or rebuild that scene inside of After Effects, and that way you have a lot more control over the coloration of it. Okay. Okay. So in After Effects, I'm going to just reset my workspace here. Yes. How many people have never used After Effects before?
I'm in it right now.
Hit skip. Okay. So a couple people have never used After Effects. The way we're using it might not be a way you've done anything in there before. Sometimes people get confused over getting a bunch of QuickTimes and putting them together as opposed to a sequence. All right. So just a real quick overview of what After Effects layout is. This over here is your project area. This is your viewing area, and this is your timeline, and then these are your tools up here, and then some other junk over there. Okay. What we're going to do is like a 1, 2, 3, or however many step process. It's very quick. So inside this project area here, we're just going to double click. Okay. This brings up the import dialog box. We have to go find our file. All right. So if we remember, our file should be on the D drive. So if you go to Computer, and you go to D drive, and you find your name, and you go to your folder. There's my Pacman folder. Okay. Now when it renders stuff out of Maya, it goes into the Images folder. So we're going to go into the Images folder. All right, so what we want to do is we want to click on any one of our images. It doesn't matter which one, but you'll see in mine it says Pacman Sarcona.0001.iff. And then down here on the bottom, it says if sequence. Okay, so this is basically going to have After Effects read this in as one sequence. Okay, if you don't have this if sequence button clicked, it will bring in just the first frame or whatever frame we have clicked. All right, so we want to make sure that we have one of them clicked, make sure if sequence is clicked, those are just default things that are typically always on, and then hit open. Okay, we're going to get a message that's going to pop up. You're going to hit ignore. Okay, so hit ignore, hit OK. And then now we have a piece of footage that's our movie. So I'm going to take my piece of footage and I'm just going to drag it down into my timeline. All right, so I just drag my footage into my timeline. After Effects automatically sets everything up. So however long my piece of footage was, it knows, okay, you had 120 frames, you're at 24 frames a second. So I'm going to make a piece of footage here that's the correct resolution and the correct length of time, so 5 seconds. So now if we hit the 0 button on the keyboard, it's going to load it into the memory and then play it through. All right, now your footage might have come in at 4 seconds instead of 5. Because my frames per second in After Effects is defaulting to 24, if I have 120 frames and I'm telling After Effects every 24 frames is a second, then it's going to be 5 seconds. If I have After Effects saying it's 30, then it'll be 4 seconds. Okay? So now this is just still a preview of stuff. So I'm going to show you a couple things that we could do But first we're going to do the next step of this. So now we're going to go up to File, sorry, I'm in CS5, sorry, go to Composition and go to Make Movie. Okay, sometimes this will pop up where it says, where do you want to save your work? I like to go back, so I click on this up button right here, and I go into my movies folder. And I like to throw my movies that I make into the movies folder. And I'm just going to label it Pacman _ Sarcona and hit save. Everyone's good so far? Okay. Then I'm going to click on the word lossless. You see where it says the word lossless right there? I'm just going to click on the word lossless. Right there on the bottom left. And then this is what kind of format we're going to output this to. The default is AVI, and AVI is a pretty crappy format. So we're going to go to Format and choose QuickTime. And then we're going to go over here on the right where it says Format Options. And from the video codec, we're going to choose H.264. Okay? So QuickTime is the file extension, so it's a .mov file. And then H.264 is the kind of compression that it's doing in order to make it a smaller file. So you could actually have a QuickTime movie be any one of these compressors, and you'll get different results. Okay? It's kind of like if you saved an image as a TIFF out of Photoshop, it's going to look one way. And if you save it as a JPEG, it'll look a little bit worse. JPEG is what's called a lossy format, so every time you save it, you actually lose data. Okay? So H.264, you're going to lose data, but we should be good. All right, so I could lose too much. All right, so H.264, we hit OK. And then we could resize this if we needed to. We could crop it. We could add audio if we had it. We're going to hit OK. And then we're just going to hit the render button on the far right. Okay, so it's going to go through. You'll see a little yellow line go across your screen. It's rendering it out. That's the simple process of what we're going to be doing in After Effects. But this process can get very, very crazy and very, very complex. Let me see which computer that is. What's your computer? 65? Oh, 66. I think it's that one. Yeah, that's what I wanted. Maybe I don't have it. No. All right, I'll show that another day. All right, so our movie's done. So now we go to our Documents folder. We go to our folder, W14, 2510, Work, Pacman, Movies, and there it is.
Movies in there.
Yep. And then there's our Pacman guy. Okay. So there's our 1 day's worth of work. Now again, remember, this is something that typically would happen over the course of sometimes days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months. That this whole process would kind of come together to get this final movie. All right. So once you get into it, the process just becomes more complex. And sometimes there's even the issue of, okay, now that we've rendered this out, now we can see, I don't really like the reflection on Pacman. So I'm going to go back into Maya, I'm going to fix my reflections, render it out again, come back in After Effects, render it out again, and then I'll have another movie. Okay? So sometimes this is an iterative process, where we kind of go back and forth, especially if you see here the back of him, where we have this reflection. It's hard to see on the projector, but there's a reflection of that ground plane in the back of his mouth. So again, that's something we may want to adjust. We may want to take out the reflections inside the mouth, but have reflections on the outside of him. Okay? So this is just a back and forth process. If you're taking something to a client, typically this is what they would want to see. One of the projects I did early on, they wanted to see basically where I was at every single day. So every single day I was rendering out something or outputting something or giving them something so that they could look at it and see, you know, what is it looking like now? What do we want to change? What do we want to do as the next step? Okay, so this is our Pacman guy. All right, so we're just going to close that. I'm going to go back in After Effects, and you'll notice this other thing. Let me open it up again so you can see it. You can see how dark the Pacman is here and how light this Pacman is there. Okay, there's actually an issue with QuickTime where it saves the H.264 movie and it lightens it. In the videos when we get to the desk and stuff, I show how to fix it, but we don't need to worry about that now. Okay.
So changed my purple floor to blue.
Yeah, because it's lightening it. So I'm going to go in here, and remember when we click that ignore button right at the beginning, I'm going to say pre-multiplied in here.
You want where?
No, don't worry about where I'm going. I'm just showing you some of the stuff that we could do.
Oh,
okay. So what that ignore button does is basically it says, I want you to take into account the alpha channel. Okay. So if you remember from InDesign, if you wanted to have like a cutout of something, or Illustrator, you want to have a cutout of something, you create a clipping mask, or you create an alpha channel inside of Photoshop. Then you could bring that in, and it would have transparency. So that's what this is back here. So if I go in here, I can make a new solid, let's say. Sure. And now that new solid is back there, and I could take this and generate a ramp. There we go. And I could adjust the coloration back here. I could flip this around so it makes a little more sense. There we go. Or I could have a video back there. I could have whatever back there. Okay. So sometimes we actually, like I said, we'll render things out separately and then bring them in After Effects and then play with them using stuff like the alpha channel. Exciting stuff. And then after this, everything is just like After Effects. We can close After Effects now. We're done with After Effects. That's the extent of After Effects we're going to do in this class, except for the demo reel that we do at the end, which is literally that quick as well.
Don't save it?
No, you don't need to save it. Okay. So now let's go back into Maya. And if you haven't copied your preferences over already, copy your preferences. I'm going to walk you through it again, just so you can see it. So I'm going to my D drive. And I'm going to my Maya folder. And I'm deleting the 2014 x64. Okay, so now it deleted the old preferences that we had for Maya. Those are gone. I'm going to go into my Sarcona folder, W14, 2510. I'm going to copy these preferences. And then I'm going to paste them in that Maya folder again. Doesn't matter what order you do things in, as long as you've deleted the preferences before you copy the new ones in. Okay? So after today, I'm not going to say that again. Okay? So just make sure that you're remembering to do that every single class when you come in. Delete the old preferences, copy yours in there so that you have your preferences. And if you come in and you can't delete the old preferences, that just means someone's rendering and you just, for that day, don't use them. You shouldn't need, you shouldn't need to have them every single day. It just makes it handy to have them. All right. So now we're back inside Maya. Everyone's back in Maya? Yes. Okay. So what we want to do is we're going to create a scene. So what I want you to do is just create a ground, and I want you to create a bunch of blocks just stacked up. Okay? Just a bunch of blocks stacked on top of each other. All right, not to ruin your artwork, but delete everything you have. We're going to do these a bit more uniform and a bit quicker, just so you can see some of the workflow that we can do for this. Okay? So just marquee all the stuff you have, hit the delete key. So create polygons plane. So do that.
Even the ground you want deleted?
Yes, everything. And then create polygon plane. Okay. Now we're going to go to the scale tool. So we're going to hit R. One of the cool features about Maya, we don't actually have to click anywhere on this. Okay. If we're in the scale tool, and this yellow, the center is in yellow, that means the center is activated. So if I use my middle mouse button way over here, I can just click and drag with the middle mouse, and you can see how I can scale this up to a really, really big size. So do that just to make your grid or your ground really, really big. Just use the middle mouse, nowhere near the actual manipulator. Okay, so just hold down the middle mouse and drag it across the screen, and that will make that bigger. And we're going to the right. If we went to the left, it would make it smaller.
What do you mean middle mouse?
This one, the wheel.
Oh.
There you go. Yeah, you got in component mode. Right click and go to object mode top right. There you go. Now click on that again and then use the middle mouse to make it bigger. The middle mouse is a scroll wheel thing. Okay, so now we're going to make a cube. So create polygon cube. And to see it, we can hit F. And to move it, we hit W. Okay, now we just want to grab the green. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hit 5 so I can see the shaded mode, because that makes it easier to see whether or not it's above the ground or below the ground, right? So then I can just move it just in the green direction, just grabbing that up handle, and move it until I see the bottom. Okay, you can see how that little line pops up on mine. Okay, so now we have a ground plane, just a plane. We have a cube that is above the ground. So now we're going to hit Control D. And we're going to move it so that it's above the other one. Okay, once it's above the other one, we're going to hold down Shift and tap D a couple times. All right, so now we're going to take this whole stack and we're going to duplicate it and create the same kind of thing. But we have to be careful we don't grab the ground plane along with this. Okay, so I can't simply just marquee it because you see how it grabs the ground. So what I'm going to do is I am going to marquee it so it grabs the ground. And then I'm going to hold the Control key and marquee the ground so it deselects the ground. Okay, so we marquee the whole thing, hold down the Control key, marquee the ground, it deselects the ground. Okay, so now we're going to hit Control D again. We're going to grab the red direction and pull it over a bit. And then we're going to hold down Shift again and hit D, 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 D. Okay, so now this is pretty boring. We're going to make it a little bit more exciting. One of the tools that's inside Maya is a program called Bullet. And Bullet allows us to knock stuff down. Now, besides me and the 3 other guys are in here, most people probably don't like to do that. So we're going to just knock it down anyway, and then if anyone wants to clean it up, they can. All right, so first thing, we need more frames. So we're going to go over here where it said 24, and we're going to type in 155. That's just a random number. Okay, so we're going to go under, let me see if it's loaded. I don't think it is. No, it is not. Okay, so we're going to go under Window, Settings Preferences, Plugin Manager. Window, Settings Preferences, Plugin Manager. And inside this is all the stuff that gets loaded when Maya starts up. Okay, so it's kind of like After Effects, where After Effects will load like every single plugin that you've ever installed on the computer every single time you do it. Well, Maya will load in what you typically use, and then as you need it, you can start adding in the other stuff. Okay, so by default, Bullet doesn't get loaded. So we're going to go down to where it says Bullet. See, it says bullet.mll, and we're just going to scoot over and say loaded, auto load. Okay, and sometimes what will happen too is, let's say we're using Bullet today, we come back tomorrow, Bullet may be unloaded again, so then we would just reload it. All right, so we're going to make sure Bullet's loaded, which it is. We hit close. And now, depending or irrelevant to which menu set we're in, we now have this little Bullet menu. All right, so we're going to click the ground, and we're going to go to Bullet, create passive rigid body, open the option box. Okay, Bullet, create passive rigid body, open option box. Hit undo. Okay, everyone's there? You work on it. All right, so we're going to change this collider type to be a plane. And then we're going to change the body type to a static body. Okay, so basically what I'm doing is saying I have a plane here, and I want this to be static. I don't want it to move. Okay, the boxes we do want to move. The boxes we want to fall. So we're just telling Maya what the difference is. So plane, static body, that's all we have to do. Apply and close. Okay. We can ignore this big like sphere thing that we get there. Just ignore that. All right. So now we're going to grab the cubes. So for this, we're not going to use the marqueing thing. You can hit apply in yours. Yep. All right, we're not going to use the marqueing trick in this because I want to show you a different way to select things. Okay, this would still work, but I want you just to see another way to do it. So we're going to use the outliner. So on your shelf, there's one called Out L. We're going to click on Out L. Okay, and inside the Out L, the outliner, is a listing of every single object that's inside of our scene. Okay, this isn't like a layers palette like in Photoshop or Illustrator or anything else. This is simply a list of every single thing that's inside of our scene. So we're going to click on the first cube, which is P cube 1. Then we're going to scroll all the way down.
How come I only have plane 1 and then?
So whatever your first cube is, it's up there. Okay. Then we're going to hold down Shift and grab the last cube in our list. Okay. So right now we should have every single cube selected. Then we're going to go under Bullet again. Go to Create Active Body and use the option box.
Create active rigid body.
Yep, and go to the option box for it. Hit undo, go to the option box. Okay. Now in this, we have to tell it what kind of object is this, because Maya doesn't know by default. So we have to say we have boxes, so we're going to use box. And then we want these to be dynamic, so we're going to leave it on dynamic. And that's it. So just change them one to box. That's a dynamic. Apply. Okay. So now what's happened is it's gone through and kind of registered and told the program the plane is a flat ground plane. It's not going to move. These boxes are dynamic boxes, so they're going to collide with this other stuff. Okay.
Apply and close or?
Yeah, apply and close. All right. So now if we were to hit the play button, you'll see that your boxes move slightly. All right, so if you look at mine, you'll see that we just have this kind of like, they just fall. Some of yours, like I said, they might fall over. Some of yours are kind of exploding. And it's all part of like the dynamics that's going into Maya and going into this little plugin. If I had a cube intersecting another cube, it would just kind of freak out. So if I just move this one like here, you can see how it didn't freak out too bad. Let me just move it here and move it there and then hit play. There we go. So you see how I kind of pushed the other ones aside, and I'm getting a little bit different animation. So this is just a completely dynamic system. So the next thing we're going to do is, make sure it's back to where it was. I'm going to create, oops. Come on, get back there.
Oh, how do you make it stop? Go home?
Just hit, yeah, escape. Escape is a stop button, and then you just hit rewind. Okay.
Hit what?
Rewind. The far left button on your time controls. Okay, so now we're going to create a sphere. So create a polygon sphere. And I'm just putting it off to the side. We're going to throw the sphere at that ground or at that wall. All right, so you want to just kind of line it up to, you know, where would be a good spot to throw it from. That's all we're looking at there. All right, so move it. I scaled mine up a little bit. There's no rotation involved, just kind of moving and scaling. So how do we get these cubes to fall?
Mine were just falling over before.
Right, but how do we get them to fall down initially? Because if we were to hit play before, nothing would happen. Like if I hit play right now, you see the sphere just kind of sticks there. It doesn't move. Maya doesn't realize that this is an object we wanted to kind of figure out the math on it. Remember the bullet menu? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we go to bullet menu. We say we want this to be an active rigid body, option box. And we tell it that we want it to be a sphere. And that's it. So we hit apply. Okay, so now that we've done that, if we were to rewind it and hit play, the sphere falls down. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the sphere and we're going to launch it at the blocks. All right. So this is where we have to pay attention to some of the stuff that's going on in here. So if I look at the sphere, I see that the yellow manipulator right here which direction would that yellow manipulator be? Any ideas? X, Y, or Z? We have three choices. Z, okay? And if we look at the positive Z is going this way, the negative Z is going that way. So basically I want to launch mine in the negative Z direction. So I'm going to come over here to my sphere in the channel box, and there's a bullet rigid shape 123. I'm going to click on that. Okay.
I got bullet shape, rigid shape 86.
That's fine. Whatever number yours is, that's what you want. Okay. And then where it says initial velocity, that's where I'm telling it that that's what I want to give it, kind of like a push. I'm saying right when we start this animation, I just want to give you like an initial push in that direction. So on mine, I'm going to go to the Z direction and say negative 30. Okay. So what that should do is give mine a little bit of a push in the negative Z direction, just to kind of get it going in that way instead of just falling straight down. Okay. So now if I hit the play button again, you'll see that now it's going to fly and it's going to hit the wall.
Nope. Oh, I didn't press enter.
Yes, make sure you press enter. Okay, so I'm going to hit the stop button. I'm going to rewind mine, and I'm going to make this a little bit more exciting because right now it's kind of boring. It just hits the one row and just knocks a couple down. Okay, this is where we have to understand some physical properties, like actually physics properties, and understand why these things happen. If we look at this in more of like a real world sense, you know, how heavy is one of these blocks? Is it a block of cement or just a cardboard box? And the same thing with the ball that's hitting it. Is this a bowling ball or is this like a beach ball? All right. Maya doesn't know what these things are, so we give them properties. So I've stopped it. I hit the rewind button. I'm going to click on the ball and go back to those properties for that bullet shape. And there's one called mass. And that's where I can say, okay, this ball is 10 pounds or 20 pounds or whatever I want. And based on what number I type in for mass is going to affect this a lot different. So you can see how it just like slams right through it now instead of being hit by it and then falling down.
Where are you at?
Okay. Because this is a physics-based setup that we have here, depending on where this ball is originally, is going to dictate where it hits. So if I move the ball up at the beginning, you see that it misses it. If I pull it back further, it's still coming down. It may even bounce and roll and then hit it. Okay. So this was when I got into 3D, this was like what I was geeked about. I just loved this kind of stuff where I could just go in there, set up a couple parameters, and then just play with it. Because this is more like a video game, more like a toy, than it is like an actual 3D thing where I have to learn it. Okay? Now there are some things that are going to help it, some things are going to make it look better. And then there's also some stuff that we can just do to make this stuff really cool. This is one of our students' works, if I spell his name correctly. Hit no to save it. You don't need to save the scene. You can always remake that later if you'd like. So now we're going to make a snowman. Okay, so just make a snowman. Okay, some really cool snowmans. Let's take these things and make them do something, because right now they're just kind of boring and they're just sitting there. So it doesn't matter where you're at in this. We're not saving it. It's just a fun thing to do, just to kind of get used to navigating inside Maya. So what we're going to do is we're going to marquee everything except for our ground plane. Okay, so select everything except for your ground. So we just have the snowman selected. And then we're going to go to the hotbox. So we hold the space bar down. We go to mesh and we go to combine. Okay, way at the top, combine. And what this is going to do is just a tool that takes everything that we have and combines it into one object. Okay? So also make sure that you have a ground. If you don't have a ground, create a polygon ground. And obviously make it big, above the ground. So now he's kind of floating above the ground a little bit. So we're going to click on the snowman and we're going to hit delete history. So there's the history button way up here. We're going to hit the delete history button. And all that does is just get rid of anything that might have been lingering in the background. I'm going to go to my outliner just so you can see this. But here are all those spheres that I used to create my snowman originally. When I delete the history, it deletes all those spheres because that's how I created it. I made a bunch of spheres, positioned them where I wanted them to be, combined it, and then I can delete the history to get rid of all that junk. Okay? So now we're going to go to the hot box and we're going to go down to this end mesh. It's on the bottom left. And we're going to go to create end cloth option box. So go to the option box on the far right. Okay? In this option box, there's nothing there. It's just, a couple things that, at some point we might play with some of these, but right now we're not going to. So we're just going to hit create. Okay, so we went to end mesh, create end cloth. Now our ground, we're going to click on the ground, go to end mesh, create passive collider. 100.
If we brought up the option box for the collide,
You can just hit apply. If you bring up the option box, you just hit apply, it'll work. Okay, so now we're just going to hit play. And it might run really slow, but what should happen is our snowman is now a piece of cloth. So he's just like a squishy guy. So as he hits the ground, he's just going to kind of melt, which is what we're hoping is going to happen soon to all the snow. All right, so this is just another kind of Maya thing that we could do. And you're going to see that throughout every assignment that we do, we're going to run into these little issues where had you clicked this box or had this thing selected or done this exact thing in this exact order, you'll get different results. You'll get, other results than what I'm getting. You can see even here, my snowman melting might be a different look than your snowman melting just because of how I created the snowman. You can see that his buttons and his eyes are kind of like flying off too, while your buttons and eyes may not be flying off of yours. And then some of these objects that we have, remember we used the attribute editor last time to play with our blend materials on our Pacman and our light properties. Well, some of these are going to have like a whole list of things that eventually, in order to get it to work the correct way, that we would need to go into this and play with. So I'm just expanding these just so you can see that some of these have like an enormous amount of properties that we have to kind of weed through to figure out exactly what we want. So as we do stuff, it's going to be very important that we kind of pay attention not only to what we're doing, but the process of what we're trying to do, okay? So in this case, we're trying to build a snowman, and we need to make sure it's polygon, and we're trying to make sure that all these pieces kind of fit together correctly. Some things that could cause an issue is if he was below the ground when we initially created him, or if we accidentally had the ground selected when we combined everything, or if we didn't have a piece of him selected when we did combine it, and now the other piece is kind of floating around. So we have to be just kind of aware of all that stuff and just be kind of like OCD about picking the right things. Even using the outliner is a great resource to be able to say, where is my snowman in this list? Obviously I know which one it is because I can click on him and see it, but at the end of our assignment this list may be enormous. And in order for us to get the exact thing we want, we have to go through it and label things. And we have to make sure that we keep our layers organized, all the stuff that we're going to do, okay? But I just want you to kind of see some of the other stuff and see some of the pitfalls that we're going to run into as we're creating some of this kind of stuff. All right. So there's our melting snowman. Wonderful. So make a new document. Don't save it. There we go. All right. I'm going to show another little clip, and then we'll work on a little bit more stuff. Only for another 15 minutes.